Today we're reviewing the Samsung Galaxy Book 5 Pro 360. This is a 360 2-in-1 convertible, whatever you want to call it. Basically the display rotates and you can write on it. But look, this is an interesting spec because this is rocking an Intel Core Ultra 5 with 32 gigabytes of RAM. I checked Amazon USA Canada, Best Buy USA Canada, Samsung USA Canada. A Core Ultra 5 model does not exist. I feel like this is a specific unit sent out to reviewers. But the interesting thing is the Core Ultra 5 inside of here tells a very important story, which I'll get to later. From a design standpoint, this thing is absolutely simple, but yet it is gorgeous. It's a nice, thick piece of aluminum. It feels a lot more premium than some of the magnesium alloys that currently exist today. It does get a lot of fingerprints on the top. Like I touched this thing, it's getting dirty. Fairly simple, not a lot going on, but you do have the Samsung logo over here. The overall weight is under 4 pounds, so like 3.73, which is fine considering that this is a 16-inch notebook. Port situation is actually not bad. For example, you do have an HDMI 2.1 port and 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports on the left-hand side. And then when you flip it over, you have a combo audio jack, USB-A 3.2, and a micro SD card slot. Now, this does come with an S Pen in the box. A lot of other 2-in-1s, usually this is not an S Pen, this is a screwdriver. I have no idea why I picked that up. But this does come with an S Pen in the box. And a lot of other 2-in-1s just don't. And that's kind of nice to have. And the beauty about this is that there's a little bit of a magnet over here, right? Where it sticks on and you can kind of place it anywhere, but it's the strongest in the middle. And I can shake this thing like crazy. Like it's just not falling. The magnet is definitely strong enough. The overall writing experience is what you'd expect from an S Pen. Because the display is 120 Hertz, it just feels nice and fluid. Regardless of whether you're drawing or taking down notes, using this pen feels fantastic. What doesn't feel as fantastic though is the hinges. Like it's easy to open up with one hand for those of you that care, but the hinges are a little bit wobbly. It's not terrible. Like I don't want to give you guys the impression that the hinges are just awful on this, but usually with 2-in-1s or 360s that can flip, you want the hinges to be a little bit tighter to the point where that opening up with one hand is a little bit harder to do because you want these hinges to be strong, right? But yeah, there's a little bit of wobble, so keep that in mind. But of course, if you place it like this, nice and flat, the display is not going to fall back on you. It just needs a little bit of tightening. What I do like though is this massive glass touchpad. This is one of the best glass touchpads that I've used in a very long time. It's the closest you're going to get to a haptic touchpad. I don't know what Samsung's doing, but the diving board is not as deep as other laptops, but yet it still feels very clickable. So when I'm pressing on this, it almost gives you the impression that it's haptic, which I absolutely enjoy. The keyboard, on the other hand, is okay. Like it's nice and clicky. It has a good sound to it, but it's a little bit shallow, okay? It doesn't have that travel distance. Again, because this thing is probably so thin, it was probably harder to do. The arrow keys are a little bit skinny. You now have the co-pilot key on the right-hand side, and yet you still have a numeric keypad for those of you out there that want it. Now, the one thing I do not like is the sticker placement, okay? Like, I mean, it's not too bad on the right-hand side. They got it pretty close to being even, but look at this Intel sticker. It's just leaning like crazy, you know? When I'm paying this kind of money, I want sticker placement to be top notch. Speaking of notches, not one exists, which is great. You do have your 2-megapixel webcam on the top and a beautiful, gorgeous 3K OLED display. 120 Hertz. It looks beautiful. It's touch and you can draw on it. Like I mentioned before, Samsung just knows how to do displays, and this one absolutely does not disappoint. Now, if you want to use biometrics to log in, the power button over here also acts as a fingerprint sensor. So right now you're looking at the 1080p webcam on the Samsung Galaxy Book 5 Pro. It's a little dark in my kitchen right now, but there's a lot of natural light still hitting me. You guys let me know how I look, and more importantly, how do the microphones sound? Now, because it's the Samsung laptop, you have access to the Samsung ecosystem. If you've always been jealous of the Apple ecosystem, the Samsung ecosystem is the closest you're gonna get. You have access to all your favorite Samsung apps, like your notes and your gallery, and they sync between your computer and your phone. You can control your laptop using your phone and vice versa. You can use Quick Share to send files back and forth. Even the settings menu on this looks like the Android settings menu on your Galaxy phone. Like you can change performance and all these other settings using Samsung's version. But what I found super interesting about this laptop was the performance. because after reviewing this, I can safely say that buying a Core Ultra 7 is absolutely not worth it. The Core Ultra 5 inside of here is pretty much identical in terms of performance. Single core clock speeds are identical to a Core Ultra 7 in the Lenovo Yoga Slim I. Multi-core speeds were actually faster on this guy compared to the Aura edition of the Lenovo laptop. It's not the fastest chip on the market. These Lunar Lakes are not meant to be that. They're just meant to be super efficient. But man, the differences between the Core Ultra 7 were negligible. In fact, this laptop actually beat out the Slim 7i when it came to Photoshop. It wasn't the fastest. That still goes to the MacBook Air and the AMD version of the Windows laptops, but it still beat out the Aura edition. That's probably because it has 16 more gigabytes of RAM. Same holds true for Premiere Pro. You know, the 130V inside of here is not as powerful as the 140V that you get with the Ultra 7, but it performed exactly where it should. Now, the interesting thing though is that 130V is just not as powerful as the Intel Arc 140V. So if you're the dude who's buying these thin and light notebooks which wants to game a little bit, I probably wouldn't buy the Book5 Pro for this, because on top of that, the laptop itself had troubles playing Overwatch. Like, it can get like 60 to 80 FPS, whereas the 140V on the Core Ultra 7 can do over 100. I just found that frames were being dropped a lot. It was chugging a little bit. Also, the keyboard deck started to get a bit too hot. I was getting temperatures of like 48 degrees Celsius, which I could totally feel on my finger. Even the average core clock speeds are identical to Lenovo Yoga Slim 7i, and it's pushing the exact same amount of power, around 30 watts, to the CPU. Fan noise is really good on this guy. Like, this thing doesn't even get close to 50 decibels. It gets the highest at like 46 or 48 if you're pushing this thing at high performance, but there's so many different profiles that you can play with to keep the fan noise really, really low. Now, the internals look quite nice. You have this black aesthetic going on for all the hardware that's inside of here. Obviously, RAM is no longer upgradable on most laptops these days, but you do have a very simple 2-fan, 1 big copper heat pipe solution. Look, you can upgrade the NVMe SSD. It's quite easy to get inside of here, but I feel like there's enough room that they could have put a place for a second one. I think the star of the show when you open it up is this battery. It's 74 watt hours. And I was getting like 16 and a half hours before needing to charge. Like, battery life on this guy is absolutely awesome. So here's the thing. I like this laptop, but I don't love this laptop. And the reason why I don't love it is I feel like it's a little bit expensive. Also, it gets a little bit toasty when you're pushing this thing to its full potential. Now, granted, most people don't use these style of laptops at full blast, but some people do. And if that's you, then it's not that well cooled. The other thing I need to mention is that if you can find a Core Ultra 5, I'd probably just stick with that. Moving up to a Core Ultra 7 with these Lunar Lake processors is not worth the extra money unless you need the extra integrated GPU performance if you want a game. Either way, it's a nice laptop. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.